Hello everyone, my name is Cora. Welcome back to my channel, Pampered Pages, and welcome to a new video. I hope you're ready because I'm finally starting Magnolia Parks Into the Dark. Honestly, I hope I'm ready. I'm a little nervous, especially with how things ended in Magnolia Parks The Long Way Home. I'm a little nervous, but I'm ready, I think. If you have been watching any of my videos since spring-ish time, you will know I have been on an MPU adventure, an MPU journey, so we are continuing along. Also, I do not know how I will be structuring this vlog, but I hope to find it along the way. An improvisation.
Sometimes I'll start a sentence and I don't even know where it's going. I just hope I find it along the way.
I'm going to make myself a cup of coffee, grab a towel, and head on out to the pool for some poolside reading as I start Into the Dark. This series has been my go-to poolside read these last couple of months, so I'm keeping the tradition alive. I've showered, I've collected some thoughts, some notes, so let's talk. Before this reading vlog progresses any further, I do want to give a spoiler warning. This vlog will contain spoilers for the Magnolia Parks universe, and as always, I encourage one to check out any trigger warnings if needed. I have read the first 2 chapters of Magnolia Parks Into the Dark, so I have read a chapter from Magnolia and a chapter from BJ. And let me just say, my eyeballs have been sweating. I did go back and just skim through the last several chapters of books 3 and 4, and then I also created a little timeline for myself just to refresh my memory. It has been a minute. If my calculations are correct, this book is picking up 3-ish months since the events in these 2 books took place. The ending in book 3 was very emotional, and I was hoping that Bridget would not pass away and that she would still be alive. However, after reading these first 2 chapters, especially BJ's perspective and then the last bit of the first chapter from Magnolia's perspective, I tabbed a couple of quotes that had me in tears. The first is from Magnolia's perspective. She says, "All alone in my mind, just wandering further and further into the dark that is the absence of her." And then, I'm not going to cry. And then also in BJ's perspective, he says, "You know how ballerinas pick a spot to look at when they're doing a pirouette so they don't get dizzy? Bridget was Magnolia's spot on the wall." It's been an emotional first couple of chapters. That is pretty much my biggest takeaway at this current moment in time. I am looking forward to continuing along. We also have a new character, Daniela, Magnolia's personal assistant, hired by Jonah. So that's where I'm at. I believe I'm going to structure this reading vlog with just some pop-ins. Whenever I have a thought, maybe revelation, really just thoughts, I'll pop in. So I'll see you at my next pop-in. Popping in, I am on page 71. I had to give myself a pep talk last night to put down this book and get some sleep. But currently, my heart is feeling every chapter, more feels, and frequent tears. It's been interesting. As I've continued to read this series, my opinions of Magnolia and BJ aren't exactly what they were since finishing the first book. Currently, my heart hurts for Magnolia so much, and now I've discovered that BJ is actively lying to her. Excuse me. I am proud of Henry, however, for telling BJ not to pit him against Magnolia. And speaking of Henry, I'm wondering if anything is going to happen between him and Tara. And I thought it was so cute how he stepped in to be Magnolia's mate of honor. I know these are fictional people, but they feel very real to me. Just call me Mary Poppins because I'm popping in for another reading update. The last time I left off with basically stating that BJ has been lying to Magnolia about something. For now, I know what information. I think it might be the only information. There might be more. I don't know. But I do know what he has not told Magnolia about. Her parents. Some side stories that are going on. We have maybe Tara and Tiller, has a nice ring to it, and then also Henry and Romilly or Romilly. I've heard both pronunciations. I tried looking up a pronunciation guide for the names, but I haven't been able to find one. I thought their reunion was super cute, so we'll see if anything happens there. I do like the glimpses we get into BJ's therapy sessions with Claire and learning more about him and what's going on in his mind. And I really hope that Magnolia also is going to get the help that she needs and that they can both continue to work on their verbal communication. I also like the flashbacks into the span of time missing from when Bridget passed and this book starts. I mentioned it earlier. It's been roughly 3-ish months. Sometimes I do find it a little difficult to differentiate when it's jumping back and forth, but it's not super distracting. In my opinion, they are appreciated and necessary for my understanding. I have one more thing I want to share in this pop-in sesh. It's a quote. It's on page 104. We are in Magnolia's perspective, and Magnolia, BJ, and Henry are having dinner with Romilly, and she's reflecting on time, and she thinks to herself, time can be a bit like that, don't you think? It doesn't hurt when you're losing it as much as it does when you see in retrospect how much you lost. And I know days don't sound like much, but they do when you don't have them anymore. I love that. It hurts so good, but I can totally relate to how she is reflecting in that moment. On that somber-ish note, I am going to jump back in and pop back in hopefully soon. I just finished the chapter where they had Bridget's funeral. I'm not okay. That last sentence. I'm bearing my guiding light. It's so late. And I'm so emotional. And this line right here. Another hard hitter. And the fact that Tom was there. This chapter. All right, I am 43% through Magnolia Parks Into the Dark, and lots has happened. For one, BJ and Magnolia are still working on their trust issues. BJ has mentioned therapy, however, Magnolia is hesitant. Then we had Bridget's funeral. I'm not okay. Grief and mental health are such prominent themes throughout this book, and I really like the way Hastings depicts loss and grief through her characters, specifically Magnolia. I'm going to be completely honest. There have been times for me when it has been difficult to read about Magnolia, whether it be from her perspective or BJ's. However, I haven't found it to be a deterrent when it comes to continuing to read along. In fact, I have found it to be quite the opposite. I am just really rooting for Magnolia. Speaking of girls, I am rooting for my girl Daisy is back. I really hope that this girl group is going to be healthy for Magnolia. That last part of chapter 24 when Magnolia and Daisy are talking about Julian and Bridget, specifically the text messages and 3 dots, my freaking heart. Their reunion was so them, and I can't wait to get Daisy and Julian's perspective from this timeline. Hopefully. Finally, Magnolia now knows about her parents potentially getting back together. Question mark. Mars has decided to go back to Scotland for the time being, and Henry and BJ found Bushka out alone late at night. Family is another huge theme that is prevalent throughout this book, whether it be found or biological, and that has been interesting navigating alongside these characters. But I am going to continue along. Debbie is blowing through at the moment. I think she is expected to make landfall as a hurricane. Let me check the latest update. The last I checked, she was... Yep, she still is. Hopefully everybody stays safe. These storms are no joke. I am definitely staying in for the remainder of the day. Hopefully make some decent progress. And I'll see you at my next pop-in. What? In that last clip, you obviously saw my entire reaction to finding out that Julian has returned. And then chapters 43 and 44 happened, and the age-old question, how many loves do you get in a lifetime, returned. I loved how Magnolia described her loves. For her, BJ is the sun and Julian is a star. But then she's thinking to herself and she says, and we're in chapter 43 here, but you see, the thing about stars is that in another galaxy, that star is also a sun. And then Julian says, in another life, yeah? And she says, I'll meet you there. I ate that up. I devoured it. I know Magnolia and BJ have stuff they need to work on. They recently had their first therapy session, and Julian does the things he does, but I just really want a happy ending for everyone. I can't help it. But back to therapy. I am so proud of Magnolia for going and BJ for opening up to her after the Daily Mail debacle. That was a little stressful, but the fact that Claire and Bridget knew each other, I teared up. We're in chapter 51 here, but I teared up when BJ said, "See, Parksy, we're good here." Handpicked by Bridge herself. Again, my freaking heart. But after that chapter, I decided to go back and skim through books 1 and 3, specifically for Bridget. I had remembered in book 1, Bridget telling BJ that he needed to see a therapist, and then in book 3 gifting him those 10 prepaid therapy sessions, but I primarily wanted to go back and reread what Bridget had anonymously written to BJ. Keeping on a similar thread, while I was doing my skimming, specifically in book 1, I realized there was quite a bit of foreshadowing leading up to this specific point. I can definitely see myself rereading these books for that alone and to re-examine some character development. Speaking of characters and some potential healthy progress, the conversation between Magnolia, BJ, and her parents regarding Billy, that was such a tough conversation to have for Magnolia and for BJ as well, but perhaps that was the most heart-pulling moment that I can recall between Magnolia and her mother. So, TBD regarding their dynamic. Overall, relationships are relationshipping. Tara and Taylor are about to have their first date. Henry seems like he is moving on, and all seems well with Christian and Daisy. I'm not too sure what's going on with Jonah, and Julian hasn't really made that many more appearances thus far. I have less than 300 pages to go though, so I'm going to soak this last half up. I just finished chapter 52, and oh my goodness, Magnolia's father in that whole conversation, no words, just fumes. But Mr. Gibbs, however, we love him. Starting 53, and that's basically where I'm at. Also, shout out to Lily, crush. So when it comes to the theme of loss, this paragraph right here sums up so much. We are on page 484, and I was just thinking about everything that Magnolia's gone through, and this sums it up pretty well. I just finished chapter 60, and I am still processing that conversation between Magnolia and her mother, but I'm hoping that Magnolia and BJ get to have their wedding for them. I'm on page 498, and during this reading sesh, I've been focusing a lot on symbolism and darkness, the title Into the Dark, etc., etc., and I got to this quote from BJ. He tells Magnolia, "Because you don't know what's on the other side of the blackness, Parksy." And throughout this whole entire book, and it's not over yet, Magnolia has gone through so much, and as I've mentioned before, I'm really rooting for her, and I hope she gets to see what's on the other side. Face reveal for this little reading. Actually, it wasn't a little reading sesh. I got quite a bit read, so yay. I am stopping tonight. Oh no, I'm losing a tab. That's also why I'm stopping tonight, because I ran out of my little tabs. But I am on page 500, so I will be picking up next time on chapter 62. I have a little over 200 pages remaining, so things are happening. Am I ready for this to be over? No, but I must continue along, so eventually it will be. It's the final countdown, friends. 98 pages to go until Into the Dark has left its complete emotional impression on my sensitive little heart. I do have a couple of questions though, some loose ends, so I'm looking forward to seeing if those get answered / tied up, but I am currently nervous about this whole Daisy, Julian, Christian, Jonah thing going on. There's definitely a sense of some looming danger and undercurrent of danger, so TBD. Right now, BJ, Magnolia, Henry, and Allie are about to set off on their Southeast Asia trip in honor of Bridget and to just get out of London for a little bit. We also have the wedding coming up. Lots of events to potentially take place in these last 98 pages. Before I jump back in, however, I'm going to go grab myself some gelato. My newest favorite Trader Joe's find is the Celebration Cake Gelato. It's so good. So that is going to be my reading treat to celebrate this finality. I am fully anticipating lots of tears. So with that being said, back into the dark I go. Well, we made it through to the other side, and by we, I mean me, Parksy, and Beej. You guys, I do not even know where to begin to move on. I made so many notes and tabbed so many quotes, but perhaps the best way to summarize my reading experience is a quote from Magnolia herself. And it's funny how much this trek feels like the physical embodiment of my last year in a single moment. This confusing, horrible walk in the dark. I'm falling all the time, tripping over everything. BJ's trying to help me, but he's in the dark too. A sort of floundering that I mostly hate, but that feels distinctly like living, so it's impossible to hate it all the way through. That's been this year for me. I've hated it fiercely for the most part, but then, is this not just the human experience? Shoved into this impossibly deep lake of loss and losing, barely keeping your head above it, then drowning in it, choking on it, somehow surviving against all odds, and then re-emerging a little bit reborn. Consider me wrecked, but in the best way possible, because this book made me feel. I still have a couple of questions regarding BJ's second regret and the incident involving Magnolia's father, but in terms of this being the conclusion to Magnolia and BJ's story, I am quite content. I am also excited to continue with Daisy's story whenever it's released, but for now, I'm going to crank up my Magnolia Parks playlist that I have been curating these last several months and memorialize some of these quotes in my reading journal. As always, thank you so much for watching. It has been a journey, but a journey that I look forward to looking back on, and I look forward to hopefully seeing you soonish. Bye!